The carnival had come to town, just as it did every year. But this time, something felt different. It wasn't the bright lights or the loud music, or even the tantalizing smell of popcorn and cotton candy that filled the air. No, it was the fog. It rolled in slowly, covering the streets like a thick, suffocating blanket, creeping its way toward the fairgrounds. By the time Emily and her younger brother, Ben, arrived at the carnival, the mist had already begun to settle, curling around the tents and stalls, making everything look like it was submerged beneath the surface of a deep, foggy sea. The air was damp, and the sounds of laughter and music seemed muffled, distant, as if they were coming from another world. "Ben, stay close," Emily warned, gripping her brother's hand tightly. At 15, she was always the protective one, especially with her little brother, who had a habit of getting lost in the excitement. Ben, only 10 years old, nodded enthusiastically, his wide eyes filled with the wonder of the carnival. He had been talking about the rides, the games, and the clowns all week, eager to experience it all. The atmosphere was electric despite the eerie fog. Laughter echoed from the funhouse. The bright colors of the Ferris wheel blinked through the haze, and the scent of popcorn lingered in the air. It felt like a dream, a world separate from reality, a place where the mundane worries of everyday life were left behind. But there was something unsettling about it, too. Something that tugged at Emily's senses, like a whisper at the back of her mind telling her to leave before it was too late. "Let's go to the Ferris wheel first," Ben exclaimed, tugging at her arm. Emily hesitated. The Ferris wheel loomed over the carnival, its towering structure barely visible through the fog. Despite its festive colors, it seemed distant, almost foreboding in the thick mist. But she didn't want to ruin her brother's excitement, so she smiled, trying to push away the uneasy feeling that gnawed at her. "All right, let's go." As they made their way through the carnival, Emily couldn't help but notice how empty it seemed. There were people, of course, families laughing, couples holding hands, children running past, but the crowd was thin, as if the carnival had been waiting for them to arrive. And the fog, it seemed to close in around them, like it was part of the carnival itself, weaving between the stalls and rides, obscuring the familiar sights and sounds. They reached the Ferris wheel, its towering shape now looming over them, half hidden in the mist. The operator, an older man with graying hair and a face hidden behind a thick mustache, gave them a curt nod as he let them board a gondola. The ride started slowly, creaking as the wheel turned, its lights flickering in the fog. As they ascended, Emily couldn't help but glance back at the ground below, watching the carnival shrink away, its lights swallowed by the swirling mist. "Look, you can see the whole carnival from up here." Ben's voice was full of excitement, but there was a tinge of nervousness to it. Emily tried to smile. "Yeah, but the fog makes everything look strange, doesn't it?" Ben nodded, but his attention was already focused on the lights below, the carnival stretching out like a distorted landscape. Emily continued to watch the fog, feeling a chill creep over her. It was as if the fog had a life of its own, moving in strange patterns, swirling around the tents and rides. She thought she saw something, a shadow darting through the mist, but when she blinked, it was gone. "Did you see that?" Emily whispered, her heart racing. Ben looked at her with confusion. "See what?" The fog was thickening, now covering the entire carnival below. It had become impossible to distinguish where the carnival ended and the mist began. The world below them had transformed into an indistinct blur of shapes and shadows. Emily's heart began to pound. There was something wrong. Something in the air that didn't feel right. The Ferris wheel creaked again, and as they reached the top, everything below was swallowed by the fog. The carnival had vanished. "Let's go down. I don't like this," Ben said, his voice trembling. Emily's stomach churned. "I don't like it either, Ben. Hold on tight." The Ferris wheel began its descent, but it was slow, agonizingly slow. The sound of the creaking wheel was louder now, as if it were protesting the weight of the mist. The lights below them flickered, casting long, twisting shadows that seemed to grow and shrink as the wheel moved. But as they reached the bottom, something strange happened. The carnival wasn't there anymore. The tents were gone. The rides had vanished. The food stalls, the clowns, the music, they had all disappeared. In their place was an empty, overgrown field, the fog hanging thick in the air. The ground was wet, the grass long and untended. The faint smell of decay drifted in the air, a stark contrast to the sweet, sugary scent of the carnival just moments before. "Where? Where is it?" Ben asked, his voice barely a whisper. Emily's breath caught in her throat. I don't know." They looked around, but there was nothing. No sign of the carnival. No sign of anyone. Just the eerie silence of the fog. "Ben, stay close. We're getting out of here." But as Emily turned to leave, a faint sound reached her ears, distant, muffled at first, but unmistakable. The sound of laughter. It was soft at first, then louder, until it seemed to surround them, echoing from all directions. The laugh was high-pitched, almost childlike, but there was something wrong about it, something that sent chills down her spine. "Ben, run!" Emily shouted. They bolted, their feet pounding against the wet ground. But no matter how fast they ran, the sound of the laughter followed them, echoing louder and louder, twisting in the fog like it was mocking them. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the laughter stopped. The silence returned. They looked around, breathless, but there was no sign of the carnival, no sign of the fog lifting. The world felt cold, and the air was heavy with something they couldn't explain. The fog seemed to pulse, closing in around them, until the only thing left was a whisper in the distance, just on the edge of their hearing. "Ben." It was Ben's voice, but it didn't sound right. It was distorted, muffled by the fog, as if it was coming from somewhere far away. Emily spun around, panic rising in her chest. "Ben? Where are you?" But Ben was gone. The world seemed to tilt. The fog wrapped around Emily, obscuring everything, until all she could hear was the pounding of her own heart. She reached out, desperate to find Ben, to find something, anything, but the fog swallowed her, pulling her deeper into its grasp. And then the fog lifted, just for a moment. The carnival was back, but it wasn't the same. The tents were tattered, the lights flickering, and the rides were still, unmoving, as if frozen in time. And in the distance, standing just at the edge of the carnival, was a figure that Emily couldn't quite make out through the mist, but one that was beckoning her. A soft voice whispered in her ear, "Come closer, Emily. It's time to play." With a gasp, she turned, hoping to find Ben, but he was gone. As the fog closed in again, Emily realized with growing horror that she wasn't just lost in the carnival. She was trapped, caught in the mist, and there would be no escaping. Not this time, and somewhere in the distance, the sound of laughter echoed once more, a chilling reminder that the carnival was not what it seemed.